I want to move on to a couple of the silver linings that do come out of the horrible result for those of us who wanted to see a changing of government, or at the very least it being put into minority. And here we go. Number one, the Greens have gone backwards. You know this, I know this, but it's good to double check, because Adam Bandt is right on the line about whether he is going to lose his seat or not in the seat of Melbourne. Now remember, Melbourne had been previously a pretty hardcore Labor seat. It then became a massive Green seat for a while. It's got way more people under the age of 50 than over, but Adam Bandt is in a world of pain. And guess who he is blaming for not preferencing him when his entire campaign was about keeping Dutton out?
A number of the lower house seats, of course, are now three-cornered contests, and so when there is a big shift from Labor to Liberal, from Liberal to Labor, it has flow-through consequences.
Yeah, this is part of the problem for the Liberal Party in seats where they're not going to win. Do they make the decision to preference the Greens to deny the Labor Party a seat, or do they preference the Labor Party, who of course end up getting a seat and growing their seat count over the number that the coalition is trying to get at an election? On a moral sense, I would prefer to have a Labor MP than a Greens MP, but there is an electoral consequence to all of this. So let's have a look at the latest numbers on the counting, which closed not long ago. Now, as you can see, on the primary votes right now, Adam Bandt at 29,000, Labor at 22,000. Now, assuming that everyone followed the how to vote, you can start to add the 13,000 to the 22,000, and that's when you start to get into the two-horse race right now, which shows, fairly obviously, that right now the Labor Party is in front. Now, those numbers there, when you see about 303,000 votes or 2,000 votes, obviously that hasn't matched the primary vote numbers. But the most important thing to notice here is that if Labor wins, it'll be because of the Liberal preferences. And basically, what will happen to the Greens is what happens to the Libs in most places, where Labor and the Greens get together to knock them off. Fingers crossed, that is what it's on its way. Number two, the wonderful Di Lee was re-elected to the federal parliament. How good to see that she is back in the position that she is as the member for Fowler. She did something spectacular this weekend in the seat of Fowler. She had an increase in her overall vote, which was pretty damn impressive to see that she had an increase. Let's maybe perhaps drop the graphics, put it all in order, and I'll just talk things through if that's okay. So Di Lee was able to win. Most importantly, she increased her vote on the vote that defeated Christina Keneally. Now, generally speaking, when it comes to independents, be they a Di Lee variety or Rebecca Sharkey or Andrew Wilkie or Bob Cutter, if you're able to get re-elected, then you are basically going to hold on to the seat for as long as you can. Now, there is a further extension to that in the seat that formerly was held by the National Party, and then an independent of Kath McGowan. She ended up taking that seat over, and when she retired, she was able to essentially hand her operation to the next generation in her seat, being Helen Haynes. So what becomes an independent seat may well often end up as an independent seat. So that's good there. Number three, the Victorian teals are in trouble. Latest numbers tonight are fascinating to watch, where you can take your pick here, where Zoe Daniel looks like she is currently less than 100 votes in front of Tim Wilson. The postal votes, which generally skew very pro-Labor, they're very pro-Liberal, might be the big difference there. Monique Ryan, who was celebrating things on Saturday night, she's now turning around and saying this thing is back into the too close to call category. Good to see, fingers crossed, but expect the worst and be surprised if anything else happens. We'll see what happens, whether the Victorian teals are going to suffer. Clive Palmer is promising to go away from Australian politics. The polite spin on it is that he says he's too old to be involved in politics anymore. We all know the ads, we all know the text messages, and we all know what the result was. Less than 2% of the vote. Now, I've got plenty to say about some of the behaviour of some of the people and how they have reacted, but let's focus on what the money man says behind all of this. I'm 71 and I'm getting too old for politics. I'd rather spend my time helping out tens of thousands that are homeless and hungry in this country, and that's why I've donated $5 million to Food Bank. And like or loathe Clive Palmer, I absolutely admire that of all of the people that were in this election, he was the only one consistently talking about that problem of too many people, more than 3 million households, so multiple people on top of that, who, of course, run out of food by the end of each and every week. He didn't just talk about it, he just run on it, he put some money into it, and he now says that his future is in philanthropy. Now, who knows whether he changes his mind with 1 year to go or 6 months to go, and it's his money to do with what he wants, but Clive Palmer says he's out of the game, and the laws that are going to change, that are going to make it harder for him to run the type of campaign he has for the past couple of elections, will also apply to the teals in the next couple of elections. All of that will be to the advantage of the two major parties, with the flow-on effect to the existing independents, as opposed to the ones who may want to grow the pie. And the fifth most interesting thing, and it is a silver lining, but it isn't a full silver lining yet. It is just the faint outlines of one, but still. There is a chance Jackie Lambie's going to lose her seat. If she does, she'll be losing it to Lee Hansen. Lee Hansen's lived in Tasmania for a long time, but obviously has only put her hand up in politics and in a political sense in the past few months. Jackie Lambie's vote comes from the north of Tasmania, and her vote, according to the latest numbers, was down at the last election, this election just gone. The One Nation vote, it was up, and basically it's Lambie 6.9% to One Nation's 5.3%. But why is there a chance Jackie Lambie loses her seat? Well, as you'll see, at that number there, the quota, all right? So you get 1 seat, point, how much is left over, okay? So you will see there that the number for the Liberals is currently at 1.5. Now, if you go and have a look at their how to vote card, it would mean that if they don't get the second seat, whatever they get over the 1, it moves to their second preference, and that, according to the how to vote, was One Nation. So there could be about half a quota of a Senate seat that is out there for Pauline Hanson and Lee Hansen. Now, the One Nation Party is currently at 0.37 of a quota. That 0.5% would take them to the 8, to 0.8. Then, when you throw in other preferences that might be around there, that's why it might get a little bit closer. If Jackie Lambie runs away with it, it will be because she was number 2 on the Labor how to vote card. So as you can see, left over in the Labor vote was 2.47. So Lambie currently sitting at 0.48 of one quota, plus the overhang of Labor, puts her at basically that same position, about 0.8, and then a whole bunch of other things where we work out what people did with their second, third, fourth, fifth and sixths. Well, all of that comes into play, including people who voted below the line. We'll talk to Pauline Hanson about that in a moment or two's time. Now, let's be honest, the only thing that's going to hurt Anthony Albanese, most likely for the next 3 years, but let's be generous and say the first year of his second time as Prime Minister and second term as Prime Minister, is going to be, well, what he does with the size of his win.
Not for 35 years has a Labor Prime Minister pulled this off. Anthony Albanese going back to back.
He becomes the first leader to clinch a second consecutive term in 21 years and does so with an increased majority.
The first PM since John Howard back in 2004 to win re-election, and the first government in 75 years to actually increase its majority in a first term. A powerful mandate.
Yes.
So, obviously, Australia has given him not just a little win, they have given him a big one, which means he has a big backbench, which means he can start to be bolder. And theoretically, electoral gravity at some point means eventually you start to lose seats. And having way more than the necessary 76 means you can afford to burn some of the backbench, as John Howard did when it came to the big idea in the 1998 election on the GST. That resulted in the Labor Party getting the majority of the popular vote, but the Liberal Party still maintained the majority of seats. Now, again, we can't say what happened 3 elections ago is what happens in 1 or 2 elections' time. We're not really in the red and blue game anymore. We know that there's the red, the blue and a bit of a rainbow in between. And I thought the Prime Minister was off to a reasonable start when it came to when, inevitably, hardcore Labor people were going to start booing or cheering that Peter Dutton had lost his seat. And I liked that he called them out from the stage. Don't do that, we don't do that, that's not Australian values. Now, I know in his heart of hearts and his hard partisan, he would have been a generation ago the type of person who was yelling out from the floor, ding dong and all the rest of it. But it was a good thing the Prime Minister didn't do it. But then he got back to Canberra today and we saw just a little sign, just a little sign of the bloke who thinks that he is invincible. Asked a question at a press conference, watch his reaction, and of course a very well-trained media who don't want to upset him, don't want to get cut off from the information teat that is the Prime Minister's office. They're going to play nice, but watch what the Prime Minister does when you ask him a question he doesn't want asked.
Well, just nonsense, as you were told yesterday, Greg. You know, people have got to stop. You know, the only person who knows is me. You were told by my office yesterday that was nonsense. The words are coming out, mate. With respect.
Are we expecting a fair bit of
No,
continuity?
look, I've said I respect the caucus. I respect the caucus. But I say to all of you, if you hear something, it is, unless it comes out of my mouth, it is nonsense. And, you know, you were told that yesterday.
Now, things can change quickly, but there is no sign of that changing quickly anytime, most likely in the next couple of terms of Parliament. I'm realistic about that. But you've always got to be careful. Remember the way that Paul Keating behaved when he got an extra 3 years he didn't expect? And the nature of this victory is that Anthony Albanese is looking at multiple terms that are in front of him. It'll be fascinating to see not just what he does and how he behaves, but more importantly, some of his ministers. His ministers think that they are the political geniuses who know everything about policy, everything about politics and everything about social media. Reality is it was, of course, the performance of the leader and the performance of the machine, that is the Labor Party, that turned things around. Not to mention a whole bunch of things that nobody could have ever expected, like tariffs, like the Pope dying, like cyclones. But none of that is to ignore from the reality that he won, and he won big. And yes, we will hold him to account by using facts as well as what we believe in to hold him to account. But I'm not going to pretend that it's all going to change anytime soon. It obviously doesn't, and Australia has made it very clear that they want him to be the Prime Minister for the next little while. So last night again on the show, I took a great amount of time to try to be as considered as possible about how millions of people are feeling, and millions of people are upset because the result wasn't the one that they wanted. But millions of people are always upset by the result, regardless of who ends up winning, because previously half, now a third of the country doesn't get what it wants.